Welcome to the Town Hall Presents PREformances with Allison Charney, Season of Hope. I'm Allison Charney, and in this series of concert and conversations with some of today's most sought-after classical musicians, I'll explore the theme of hope while offering PREformances' signature ungoogleable insights into the music we make. I can think of no more perfect partner in this exploration than the historic Town Hall, who sparked a new, more optimistic climate when it opened its doors 100 years ago. Together, in our pursuit of optimism, we will also address the existential question: if musicians are making music, but there's no one there to hear it, have we really made music? My answer is not without you, our audience. By being here to listen, you, who are people from all walks of life who have come together here, even virtually, to engage in the arts, are playing a critical role in the experience we are going to share together. I am delighted to welcome to PREformances' Season of Hope, cellist and my friend, Peter Seidenberg. Welcome, Peter.
It's so great to be here. I feel so lucky that you asked me to do this. And what I should just fess up, right? I just am burnt out. I'm so tired, and I don't want to think. I don't want to introspect too much. And playing cello and performing is, you have to kind of tear yourself down a lot, and I just didn't want to go there. So, and you asked me to do this, and I said yes, and then I called you up a few days later, and I was like, I'm kind of tired. What do you think? And then you had this clever way of pulling me in without my even knowing it. You just were like, and then by the end of our conversation, we had enough for several podcasts.
I was going to say, by the end of our conversation, you were proposing piece after piece after piece after piece that we had no time to do. So we'll have to figure out another way to get all that music done. Let's talk about some of the music that you are going to preform for us today. So I'd like to talk about the Bach movement of a sonata that you're going to do. And for those people who might really be in the know, they might be wondering about this choice, because Peter is, I can guarantee you, a cellist, and he does play only the cello. But this is a piece that Bach imagined would be played by a violin.
Yes, he didn't just imagine it. It's actually written on the music. It says violin.
I was giving you a little leeway, but yeah. One of the ways that I am imagining this word hope in the title of this season, Season of Hope, is that I want to give license, I want to give freedom to the artists to perhaps do a piece that they would never, ever have done before in the real world. A piece that they've just always wished they could play, always hoped they could play, for whatever reason. I was sort of imagining it with singers that, maybe there's a bass aria that a soprano has always loved, and why not sing it?
Yeah, it's very similar.
But I hadn't really thought of it in terms of, why not a cellist play a violin part? And when I say that about soprano and bass, I can make the transposition in my head, but I wonder for the strings, are you playing it in the same register that a violin would play? In other words, is it the same C when you play a C, or are you playing a C an octave lower than where the violin would play? How does that work?
Yeah, so I play this piece in an octave lower, but it's exactly the same pitches. It's just lowered by one octave, except for there's really a couple of cool things. Because I have a lower string than the violin, there's a couple of places where I get to utilize my C string, two places toward the end. So this piece is in F major, and and there's this chord where the root of the chord would be the F, which is the tonic of the piece. And violinists can't play it, so they have to play the third above the F. They have to play the A.
So if you can imagine, for example, the song Do Re Mi from Sound of Music, Peter is able to play do. He's able to play in that moment the grounding root note, whereas a violinist ends up on mi, do, re, mi, and that gives you a slightly different feeling then this grounding connection to the earth moment.
Yeah, so I got to play this F. So I, escape down, or I actually don't escape. They have to escape to the third of the chord.
So to be clear, Bach wrote an A.
He wrote an A, so oh my gosh, strike me down. I actually changed JSB's music. Now this is going out to the world or whoever's listening. I hope I don't get my license revoked.
Yeah, your music license revoked. For all we know, Bach would be like many of the living composers I know you work with frequently and say, cool, do the F. Yeah, I love it.
Do the F. Yeah. And then at the very end, the penultimate chord, right before the end, I get to play, for this dominant chord, I get to play the low C, and violinists can't do that. And it just, it's juicy, right? Right before the end. It's so
the
fun.
dominant chord is a chord that's formed on the 5th scale degree. So that would be like do, re, mi, fa, so, if we're still sticking with the Sound of Music as a guide. And so in F major, I assume we're still in F major, the dominant chord would be based on a C.
C, there it is. You know what? If I had been a little more clever about my answer, you would say, why are you playing this piece? And I'd say, well, because I can play a low F and I can play a low C, violinists can't. So that's why I chose this piece. This piece to me reminds me of those shots from like the space station or something, or from like standing on the moon and looking at the earth. It's like the inexorable slow turn of life, it's just, there's something so deeply philosophical about this piece. You cannot put it into words, and it's so touching and so hopeful.
And now we will hear Peter play the 3rd movement of Bach's C major sonata for violin for cello. That was the third movement of Bach's C major violin sonata, played on the cello by Peter Seidenberg. So let's talk about some grand opera. Because together we are going to do an aria that has a beautiful cello solo from Verdi's Un ballo in maschera, and this is the aria Morrò ma prima in grazia. And one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that you wanted to be looking at, while you played this, not the cello part only, but the full score, or well, the piano vocal score. In other words, normally in an orchestra situation, the orchestra members are looking at really just in their own little world. They're just seeing their own notes. And maybe that'll change in the land of iPads, putting music on iPads, but it's to reduce the number of pages that the instrumentalists have to have on their stands, because the stand can only hold so many pages of music, and it's really tricky to take your hand off your instrument to turn pages. But I've always been astonished to realize that it is possible, therefore, to play an entire opera and not have a clue what a single word is in the opera, or who's singing at any given time, or even, if you're a cellist, what the trumpet is playing or what the timpani is doing, or there's no way to know what else is going on other than listening in the moment, which is certainly a good thing to do. But Peter, you really wanted for this to be able to, I assume, to see my part go by and to see the words. And I wonder if you could talk about that.
Cello parts are all secrets, and the score is the teacher's manual, as it were. And I, ever since I started using my iPad, I realized that playing off the score made me a much more reliable and informed musician, and that I could do so much more. I could be so much more collaborative and supportive. Of course, in a piece like this, you are the star, and I'm accompanying you. I'm as you and I talked about it before, I'm the conscience, or I was thinking of, like the Greek chorus. So.
Peter, in this aria, as the singer, I don't hear the cello as being a support system, but as being, I think just that, like the inner truth and the inner monologue and the impetus for the emotion. Maybe that's just the way you play it.
Oh, I was about to say, maybe we should re-record this.
Everybody understands, like, one of the challenges of all of this is that we can't, unfortunately, play it at the same time. You can't play and I can't sing at the same time because of all these latency issues. There is no making synchronized music at the same time, the same thing, in this platform. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen. So we have to, each of us, take a turn and have each other's recorded music in our ear. It's just a whole new.
But I'm lucky in this situation for this aria, because I got to hear you sing it, and I studied it, and I studied the words, and I studied the way you interpreted and presented the text, and it gave me such a deeper insight into how to play it.
I have to say, there's one part of this. So, again, it is pre-recorded, but there's one part that on the word Spain Talama, I take so much time in an inappropriate way, and the reason for it is because I was listening to Craig. I misunderstood when I should come in, and so I came in too early, and I could hear that Craig was not playing yet, and so I just held on so I could catch up.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and it gives it a kind of longing. The way it's like an appoggiatura in a way, except for it's because you start before the bar line. It's like the harmony. It's like a suspension.
Yeah.
A pre-suspension, as it were.
Yeah, again,
it really, really is cool. It's very tenutoed, it was fun to play off of that.
I may well get my musician license revoked for that moment.
Can you tell me a little bit about the text and the context of the text?
So this aria is sung by a wife to her very powerful husband, saying, "I understand that you have sentenced me to death." You know the way it goes in a marriage.
Right. Divorce, no. Death.
Death, no problem.
That Jack Benny thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I will die, Morrò. I will accept this fate, but not before I hug my son, my only son, one more time. And you can deny me this favor, this deep request as a spouse, but surely you cannot deny me the mother of your child. You know, it actually, when I think about it right now, and I've never thought about this before, there's something biblical about the text. She says, "My son, my only son." And God says to Abraham, when he asks for the sacrifice of Isaac, the binding of Isaac, he says, "Take your son, your only son," which is a moment of great scholarly questioning, I think. But that line about my son, my l'unico figlio, my only son, that always gets me.
Yeah.
Like, because just imagine, and it is very easy for me to imagine the bond of a mother to a son since I have two, but I could imagine having only one, that bond is
Fierce.
fierce.
Yes, indeed.
So
Wow.
why don't we, together with the brilliant pianist Craig Ketter,
The genius, Craig.
Genius Craig Ketter, hashtag genius. Why don't we do now Morrò ma prima in grazia from Un ballo in maschera by Giuseppe Verdi. And that was an aria from Verdi's great opera Un ballo in maschera, a masked ball, performed by me, Allison Charney, soprano, Peter Seidenberg, cello, and the genius Craig Ketter, piano. So let's talk about this beautiful piece, Prayer, by Ernst Bloch.
This happens to be a great piece of music that happens to be written for cello. You know what I mean? It's like, and maybe one of Bloch's greatest pieces. You know, probably top 5 of his pieces. It's extremely well known from his, you know, body of work, and there's a great reason, because it's so full of fantasy and imagination and soul and
liturgy.
Yes,
right.
It's true. But this is
a biblical theme throughout this program.
Interesting. We knew that.
Planned it that way.
I feel like when you're a musician, your religion is music. So even if you aren't a practicing religious person, you understand the religiosity of some of these characters. In the Bach that we just heard, that world turning, I feel so spiritual when I think of that.
So I think we should actually, before we hear you play it, I want to admit to something with this piece. So Peter first recorded this piece thinking that he would be playing it as a solo cello piece, even though it's written for cello and piano. And then the fabulous Craig Ketter said, well, I can try to play it too. And
genius,
so the genius, Craig Ketter, genius. I actually, we're joking, but we mean it.
Yes, I mean, yeah, so everyone, imagine that I played this piece by myself a couple months ago, because that's why I had the beard.
Not imagining. Oh yes, we should make the fact that you had more hair on your face.
Yeah, and less hair on my head. Like I just moved everything upside down, and I just played it didn't think at all about a piano part, and then go ahead.
And then Craig just, put his headphones on and had Peter. To be fair, I sent him the video also, so he could watch Peter at the same time as he listened to Peter, which is really important because you can see the bow change, you can see the shift of the strings, you can see the fingers on the strings making the note changes, and that really helps understand the timing of the piece as well as listening to it. And Craig was able to play the piano part that Bloch wrote perfectly in sync with Peter. So this was, this is how we're doing all music these days, but this was really not meant to be until Craig put his genius on it. And so now I cannot wait for you all to hear Peter Seidenberg, cellist, and Craig Ketter, pianist, play Ernst Bloch's Prayer. And that was Prayer by Ernst Bloch, played by Peter Seidenberg, cellist, and Craig Ketter, pianist. So we go from one prayer to another. This next piece has the name of a prayer. It's called Kaddish. And Kaddish is the name of the Jewish prayer, the prayer for mourners. So this piece was composed by Marianna Rosett with words by Brooke Bailey Johnson. And this is from this piece, Kaddish is from this bigger piece called Ghost Brothers. And it is the story of Marianna's life, really. She was born just after World War II to parents who had had a previous marriage and a previous family who tragically perished at the hands of the Nazis in concentration camps during the Holocaust. And her father in particular did not talk about what had happened, and immediately after the Holocaust married her mother and immediately began creating a new family. And he never talked about anything that had happened. And she would get these clues. She would see a family portrait, for example, a family picture, and there would be a young child in the picture who kind of looked like her, but whom she had never met. And anyway, over time, she realized that that was her half-brother who had died.
So heartbreaking.
It's agonizing. And so apparently this was a really common experience for children born in Europe at this time to parents who were, sort of getting a tragic do-over. And they lived with these untold secrets. And so she refers to these siblings as her ghost brothers. It incorporates the Hebrew and Aramaic words of this prayer, the Kaddish, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, for example, and actually even more poignant for me as a studier and learner and lover of language. They've written the text not in modern Hebrew, which would pronounce that as just as I just did, which is how I learned it, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, but in the old-fashioned Hebrew, Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei Rabbah. To me, that difference is my saying it or my grandparents saying it. My grandparents would never have learned the t sound for that letter. It would have been a s sound. So they would never have said it yitkadal. They would have said yiskadal. And so that moment when I sing yiskadal v'yiskadash, it connects me immediately in a chain to my grandparents.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. And to understand that, I mean, it's the piece is heartbreaking. It's a challenge to play because it's so sad. It's just and hearing you sing it, and I listened to it multiple times, of course, brought me into that world and into that story, understanding. But now you're talking about how there's this bridge to the past, this little sonic, subtle bridge to the past is even more profound.
There's also, in the sadness, I mean, just as, just you can't experience sadness without understanding joy. And there is hope and
there's even playfulness
as well.
Right? There's some playful playing, that goes on in the pieces.
I think that's true to the composer's feeling about her life, that, there was this horrible grief that was sort of underlying everything. And yet there was joy and happiness. And let's face it, for her parents, there was a new beginning. I mean, they were able to create again and create life and make a future. And as much as, the Jewish people certainly throughout history have been, people have wanted to destroy the Jewish people over and over again in generation and generation. And somehow this tiny people have sustained themselves and continued. And here is Marianna, the daughter of this family, creating this beautiful music for us to share. I did want to talk a little bit about the complexity of putting this piece in particular together in this virtual world. One of the things that that has been sort of standard for Preformances Season of Hope is that we've recorded things in general, sort of N+1, I'm calling it, meaning the first person puts down their part, the second person listens to the first person and puts down their part. My editor, my 15-year-old son, puts those two parts together. The third
Evan, the genius.
Evan the genius. Genius is the theme of this episode. Genius and liturgy. And then the third person will listen to the first person and the second person together. And then we put person 2 and person 3 together, and that goes back to person 1, who now gets to listen to person 2 and person 3, and then we get person 1 back in. But for this piece, what we found is that nobody could go first. There was no way to go first on this piece. And so we needed N plus a gazillion, because we needed to keep hearing each other throughout the whole piece. There was just, there was no way to do it isolated.
Right, or another way of looking is we all went first and then were extracted and then relayered. And you'll hear that the piece starts with a cello solo, and then and everybody has moments of singing or playing by themselves.
And Peter, how did you handle that on your end?
Well, one of the things that I did, this is a huge learning curve, the putting all of this together, not just this piece. But what I realized is, I had to have an iPad in front of me with my score. I had to have a foot pedal to turn. I had to have an iPad behind me, behind the score, to have a dead-on view of me playing. And then I had to have my earbuds in so that I could hear the recording, which was a video on my iPhone, which I realized the best thing for me to do was to put it to my left, high up, like, Allison height.
That's not so high, but yeah.
For cellists, I'm sitting. Your stature is
5'3.5" seems huge if you're sitting down. Yeah.
Yeah, like way up there. So I put you and Craig on a stand high up to my left with my little iPhone. So you may see when you watch this, for those of you that are watching this instead of hearing it as a podcast, you'll see that I lean to my left and cue or take a cue from Allison or Craig. I'm looking this way, and I do it in our other ensemble, and all 3 ensemble pieces. I'm always looking this way to make music.
I too look to my right at you in my imagination. I look to my right, you're in my imagination, not because I have the iPhone there or a visual image of you, but that's just the way we would be if we were doing live. If you can imagine, the piano is sort of in the back a little bit, and the soprano is in the crook of the piano, and then the cellist is off to sort of almost parallel with the seat of the piano, or sort of. And so it's just natural for me to turn to the right to look at you playing cello, and I found myself doing that just naturally, just turning to look at you. So it's a little Brady Bunch-ish.
That's right. That's right. But you know what? It really is, honest to God, it's music making. It really, the way especially this piece, because we did multiple takes of the same material. So it evolved. It's like we rehearsed.
Yeah. It was a little bit more like rehearsal. I too needed, I needed to see Craig. And so I had my iPhone on my music stand right in front of me, but out of view of the camera, because I could not get this one entrance right. And if I watched him and I watched his hands go down in the keys, I got it right.
It's great. And by the way, let me just say, it's the best kind of rehearsal because there was no talking. It was
arguing.
No discussion. It was just, I send you a track, you listen to it, you revise your track, you stick it back, you bring it back to me, and it was so good.
You cursed at me without my being there. Like, why would you do it like that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you breathe there?
But it's interesting because there are a couple of passes for all of us, and the way the person passed it was, that's what you got. And there's so many ways to interpret music, and many of them are good and work really well.
Well, when you say that about the pass, it's like in football, if somebody throws you the ball and you're on the run and you catch it and it's not perfect, doesn't just land, doesn't just drop in your hands perfectly. And so you have to sort of fumble. I don't mean fumble, but you have to sort of struggle with
choreograph your movement
and change your hands just a little bit and change the angle of your body, because that was the pass you were throwing and you want to get to the line. You want to make a touchdown. And so you've got to just take what you've got and keep going and make it magic. Not that anybody threw any passes that weren't beautifully done to each other, but
they all worked.
It maybe wasn't exactly what you were imagining in your ear was going to happen.
That's right. So, hence it's real music making, because that happens on stage.
I was going to say, which is what happens live, right? Things happen all the time live, and you think like, whoa, okay, I guess I'm going to do this then. If that's
yeah, and that's good.
So I think we should show what we've come up with.
Yeah.
And here is Marianna Rosett and Brooke Bailey Johnson's gorgeous piece, Kaddish, from their larger work, Ghost Brothers, performed by me, Allison Charney, soprano, cellist Peter Seidenberg, and pianist Craig Ketter. And that was Kaddish from Ghost Brothers by Marianna Rosett.
I found another theme.
Oh, yes, other than genius and liturgy.
Yeah, Mom. So what's the next piece that we're doing?
Next piece, Till There Was You from The Music Man.
My mom's turning 90, and I'm going to try to go see her. I can't see her on her birthday, but I'm going to see her a couple of days later. So there's something about Till There Was You has a lot of resonance.
Happy birthday, Carol Seidenberg. This piece is for you. So speaking at the beginning, we spoke about how Peter didn't want to play cello anymore, and he didn't want to do this program even after he told me he would, and he was stuck. And then all of a sudden, Peter has millions of pieces he wanted to do. This one really, not only did Peter want to do this, but I completely forgot that we were going to do it. And it was only at the very last that Peter's like, what about Till There Was You? I'm like, oh, rats. Totally
Yeah, right. And the reason I remember it, it's like dessert. You know, it's yummy. It's like a good yummy sundae or something.
It is yummy. And I have to say, we had so much fun putting this together, even on the fly, that now we're sort of tempted to figure out a whole bunch of these we could do for some other.
It's so fun. And this was really music making. I felt like even more so because you and Craig laid this down. You sent it to me. You gave me a part, the score again. It has no cello part.
Oh, so right.
I got to, you know, as it were, I got to compose my own cello part to this piece. I used all of his notes.
You know, it's interesting in episode 3A of PREformances, Season of Hope, composer Michael Ching was on as the Arc Trio performed works that he had composed for us. And one of the things that he talked about, because the Arc Trio is this same combination, piano, cello, soprano. And one of the things he talked about was that he loves the idea of a duet between cello and soprano, that he feels that it's reminiscent to him of two voices, of a tenor and a soprano, and what could be better, he says, than a tenor-soprano duet. So I thought about that when, especially because the way you put it is that you really wanted to turn this into a duet. And so I don't sing the whole piece. I actually, a whole verse is sung by you. The way that you play the cello, that you really make your cello sing. And so it makes sense. It makes sense to me that you're singing with me on this piece. So here we have Carol Seidenberg's birthday song, Till There Was You, from The Music Man by Meredith Willson, sung by me, Allison Charney, played and sung on the cello by Peter Seidenberg, with the genius Craig Ketter on the piano.
Happy birthday, Mom.
There were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ring
And that little bit of dessert was Till There Was You from The Music Man by Meredith Willson. Peter, I am so grateful to you for getting out of yourself and deciding that you were going to play cello again and joining me on Season of Hope. You're one of my favorite guests, and I'm so happy that you're with me for this new COVID pivot into the virtual world.
I feel lucky you twisted my arm, and you've inspired me. As always, every time we get together and make music, I always feel like I want to do more and more and more. So you got me going.
Here's to getting going.
That's hope, right? That's a little personal hope.
Yeah, I think we need to grab onto whatever hope we can find.
Yeah.
So my hope is that we get to do this together in person soon. As I've been saying to everybody who comes on this show, next time in person. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I close every PREformances the same way, with Richard Strauss's 90-second long gem, Zueignung, a piece filled with dunk, with thanks, because I am always truly so overfilled with gratitude at this point in the program. I'd like to thank the Town Hall for hosting me and Season of Hope. I would like to thank the Friends of PREformances for their generosity and all of my featured guests for their brilliant artistry. This series would not be possible without the creative and technical input of Mele Araya, Lawrence Zucker, Jeff Mann, Nevin Steinberg, and Evan Epstein, who join me in offering special thanks to you, our PREformances Season of Hope audience, for giving us all a reason to keep the music playing. And now, Zueignung.